Thanks, Sean. Yeah, Haven Life, guys, is a biotech leader and working on improvements for cognitive performance through psychoactive compounds. Tim Moore is CEO of Haven Life and joins us today. Coming up on September, I believe it is, Haven Life's going to celebrate their 1-year anniversary as a publicly traded company. It's great to have Tim with us today. There he is. Good to see you, Tim. Let's jump right into things here. Give us a little bit of an overview, a little bit of an introduction, if you will, into Haven Life.
Well, good morning. How are you today?
Fantastic.
So Haven Life, we have two parallel business strategies. One is using restricted compounds, the psychedelics, psilocybin specifically. The second is natural health products, using non-restricted compounds, things like lion's mane and reishi and so on. And we support those by having a robust and diverse team of business operators to support our science team. On the science side, we are building a supply chain of naturally derived active pharmaceutical ingredients to support the industry. We're building a facility in Vancouver where we'll be growing mushrooms, extracting and refining, and then shipping doses from there. We're waiting for the Health Canada approval. As you can imagine, Health Canada is a little distracted right now, so the normal 270-day approval cycle is a little bit longer. So what we're doing is we're validating those processes at a facility in Jamaica where we have a crop in production, and we are validating our extraction SOPs in a GMP facility that will allow us to export from Jamaica. On our natural health product side, just this week, we launched our first 7 SKUs at Nestor's Market in Vancouver, as well as on e-commerce. Today, we announced that we're also going into Choices markets in British Columbia, and we have other retailer announcers to come. Our e-commerce site is up. We'll be up on Amazon soon, and we're just looking forward to continuing to build out our business and build out our cash flow, both on the natural health product side and on the restricted compound side.
Lots of information there. So let's break this down a little bit. I want to talk about the supply side of the business first, because it's a little bit of a different approach as far as other companies in this space have taken in the past, but a very interesting one, and one with lots of possibility and lots of opportunity. So before we do that, though, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself first, because you have a very interesting story and how you got involved with Haven Life.
Sure, and so I'm a 63-year-old career packaged goods person. I've got over 35 years in traditional packaged goods. I spent 18 years at Clorox, 7 years at Brita, worked for some other companies in that space as well. I come into the psychedelic space based on personal experience. I have 5 sons. My oldest son will be 36 shortly. My youngest is 24. The boys are all fine now, but it hasn't always been that way. I've dealt with mental health issues over the last 3 decades. 2 of them have anxiety disorder. 1 has Asperger's. I had a suicidal 14-year-old who was institutionalized for a short period of time. My middle son was hit by a drunk driver 6 years ago and ended up as an opioid addict as a result of his treatment for his injuries. I spent 2 years watching him die on opioids, and ultimately it was cannabis that saved his life. That got me into the cannabis space about 4 years ago. But a little over a year ago, when I saw the promise that psychedelics and psychoactives offer for things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, anger management, substance abuse, I knew that this was a space I wanted to be in so that I could help be in the industry of hope to provide people an opportunity to not have to go through what I've been through in the last 30 years. So that's how I got here, and I'm pretty engaged and motivated. And as I said, it's the industry of hope. We offer people the promise of getting back to a normal life, those that are suffering from severe things of anxiety, depression, and other terrible afflictions.
And it's important for people to understand, and you know, obviously coming from a past where, as you've said, you've had firsthand experience with the downfalls of mental illness and mental health. It's important for people to understand that there is opportunity here, and there is success to come down the road, whatever form that takes. So we're happy to have you with us today, Tim, to shed some light on this a little bit further, and maybe make people a little more comfortable with this overall kind of stigma that remains in this sector.
Yeah, so unfortunately, psilocybin and other psychedelics got caught in the war on drug, probably more as a backlash to the hippie culture based on the conservative mores of the time. But there's been a lot of solid, very legitimate science behind psilocybin going back to the 50s. And by places like Johns Hopkins University, the University of Toronto, Imperial College and King's College in the UK, NYU. All of these places have Center for Psychedelics, and so that science is legitimate. There's been many people attending retreats where they've been treated with psilocybin. There are people that are self-medicating, unfortunately using black market product, but there's people that have been through treatment. Veterans with PTSD will say that a single treatment with psilocybin can provide them with weeks of relief. So there is that evidence. What the industry is waiting for right now is for that approval from the FDA or Health Canada to move forward with a regimen of psychedelic assisted therapy. And the opportunity that HAVN Life saw is that most of the work that's happening with psilocybin, and there's probably 300 or 400 studies in the field right now around the world, they're almost all using synthetic psilocybin, which is both very expensive and is not natural. And people seeking an alternative to pharmaceuticals are preferential to naturally derived. So we're building a supply chain of naturally derived API to support the industry across a range of genetics. And we're looking forward to being a supplier to clinicians, to retreats, to people doing clinical trials, and ultimately to formulators.
Let's talk about the health product line. You mentioned soon to arrive on Amazon. That's big news for the company. Give us a breakdown of what people can expect as far as this line is concerned.
So we've launched the first 7 SKUs, which focus on things like mental clarity, alertness, immunity, and other important functions. We will be expanding the range by adding functional foods, things like functional teas, and maybe some other products as well. But more importantly, we're going to be expanding our geographic footprint to additional retailers, first across Canada and then expanding into the US next year. Where our e-commerce site is up and getting some traction, but we really know that a significant breakthrough will be getting up on Amazon. We're just a few days away from that happening, and we'll making sure people are aware when it's also available on Amazon.
The other side of the business is going to be the clinical trial side of things, and this is where most of the attention, most of the focus is placed in the psychedelic medical space. But tell us how HAVN Life is approaching the trial side and the research side of the business.
Yeah, so we are involved in the trials. We have a preclinical trial currently in field on inflammation and immunity. So chronic inflammation like arthritis and acute inflammation such as surgery. We'll have results from that later this year. We recently made an acquisition of some IP for treatment of cluster headaches, and we'll be doing preclinical trials on that in the near future. And but the other role that we have is in clinical trials, as I said, is to be a supplier to a broad number of people that are conducting these trials. Because the challenge, if you're single-mindedly focused on clinical trials and working towards ultimately having an approval, is it can be a 3 to 5 year road. And we see ourselves in revenue this year by being a supplier to that industry. So I'm excited, and it's an important milestone for us coming up when we actually get the API from Jamaica shipped to one of our supply agreement customers here in Canada, and we hope to have that happen sometime in the second half of 2021.
And let's reemphasize that profitability expected this year. I want to talk about this supply angle a little bit further here, because that opens a lot of doors as this sector continues to expand and more participants come into the sector. Tell everyone what they need to know about the real growth potential here on the supply side.
Well, if you take a look at the major forces at play here, mental health is a huge global issue. 11% of the population has some form of mental health issue, and that's growing. I mean, we're anticipating there's going to be an echo pandemic after COVID of mental health consequences because of the huge number of people that have been affected in a number of different ways, having lost their job, lost a loved one, whatever the consequence was to them, plus mental health, the frontline workers in healthcare. When was the last time we built temporary morgues? So, they've been dealing with battlefield conditions for over a year now, and we can't expect that millions of people to have undergone that without more mental health. So, it's a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry for the treatment of anxiety and depression, multi-billion-dollar lost productivity as a consequence of people, with lost time from work. So, there's a huge available market out there for psychedelic assisted therapy and the types of products that we will be supporting as API supplier. And what we're also seeing the attitude toward mental health evolving pretty quickly. So, it's now acceptable to not be okay. It really wasn't that long ago that cuckoo's nest was a real thing, and we locked people up in asylums and called them crazy and didn't think about them. But today, it's okay to say I'm getting treated. It's okay to say I have anxiety and I'm seeing a therapist. So, we see that that's going to bring more people out seeking treatment, seeking alternatives to pharmaceuticals, and that the industry's got a very robust future ahead of it.
And only in the infancy at this point. Tim Moore, CEO of HAVN Life, joining us, guys. HAVLF on the OTC markets in the U.S., also HAVN on the Canadian Securities Exchange here in Toronto. Best of luck, Tim. It's a great story, and we can't wait for an update in the future.
Okay, thanks. I'd love the opportunity to come back and update you on more of our milestones. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Good to speak to you today, guys. There's a look at HAVN Life listed here, as I mentioned.